The St. Lucia Social Development Fund presents Sons and Daughters of St. Lucia, the Land, the People. Today's program highlights Vernon Cooper's growth and his contribution to St. Lucia. Harmson, Ellis and DeVoe, A History of St. Lucia, page 249. The British West Indies Regiment Overseas. In June 1915, while the British House of Parliament still debated whether or not to accept black West Indians into its army, St. Lucians were already joining military units in Canada, Britain and France. A front-page advertisement in the Voice of August 19, 1915 attracted 80 volunteers. Vernon Cooper is born 7 months later, on March 16, 1916, to George and Mrs. Cooper. By 1936, bananas were competing with cocoa as the island's third largest export crop after sugar and limes. This was a time when the middle class, well aware of their social standing, seemed somewhat interested in agitating for improved political conditions. At that time, St. Lucia was included in the government of the Windward Islands under a lieutenant governor. Vernon Cooper turns 24 when he is called to the bar locally in 1940, and by then the Second World War had already started. He was one of St. Lucia's first colored lawyers. In his own words, in the 1920s and 30s, whites and middle-class people of color mingled but did not mix. Mr. Cooper was one of the longest-serving barristers in St. Lucia, having started his early practice in the chambers of Sir Allen Lewis. He practiced for 56 years, retiring in 1996. This is the St. Lucia that Mr. Cooper knew, a time when the Second World War had come directly to Port Castries. The German submarine U-161 entered the port and at 10:50 p.m. fired 2 torpedoes at ships berthed alongside the wharf, the CNS Lady Nelson and the SS Umtata. 20 people were killed and 19 others hospitalized. The mid-1940s were characterized by impacts of the Americans: overcrowding, typhoid, prostitution and STDs. By the end of the war, unemployment and underemployment were high and unionization was recognized as a critical tool to providing an avenue for people to voice their grievances. In October of 1950, the St. Lucia Labour Party was born and Mr. Vernon Cooper was one of the founding members, serving as the first treasurer. In recognition of his contribution to country, he was awarded the Order of the British Empire. Quite apart from his illustrious law career serving as Queen's Counsel, Vernon Cooper owned and edited the Crusader newspaper for many years, until he passed it on to Mr. George Odlum, now deceased. Writing under the sobriquet of The Vicar of Bray, Mr. Cooper's satirical columns were the lifeblood of the publication. He served as a past chairman of the St. Lucia Tourist Board, the Public Utilities Commission, and Dean of the St. Lucia Bar Association. His greatest achievement? He was a husband and father. St. Lucia lost this son of the soil, Vernon Cooper, QC, on October 23, 1996. Well, that's all we have time for today. Join us next time for another in the series of Sons and Daughters of St. Lucia, a program designed to highlight various aspects of the lives of people who assisted in the development of our island, St. Lucia.